Sweet, fresh meat.
It's a new year, and believe it or not, we've got a New Year's slasher for you. No, not that one. Maybe next year. No, instead, we're going back down the old Jamie Lee Curtis well on today's Real Slashers. Pranks going wrong could almost be considered a staple of the slasher genre. There's just nothing that turns someone into a killer more efficiently than a good old-fashioned prank. And if she's involved, forget about it. Join us on the train ride from hell as we board Terror Train.
Look, Elena's nice. Confused, but nice.
You know, a surprising number of the movies we talk about in this series were made because of some producers wanting to rip off Halloween, and today's entry is no exception. What is different is that producer Daniel Whodunit actually asked permission from John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, who in turn gave their blessing. So if you're going to rip something off, make sure you ask the original creators first. And there's nothing quite like a tale of revenge. The film comes from first-time director Roger Spottiswoode, who had served as Sam Peckinpah's editor for several years. So it was certainly in capable hands behind the camera. T.Y. Drake was tasked with scripting Halloween on a Train and got to work on fleshing out the story. I want to thank you guys for watching Real Slashers and ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now. Like this video and click on the bell so you can be notified each time a new video goes up. And now, back to the show. One New Year's Eve, Alana Maxwell, played by Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis, reluctantly helps her friends prank poor Kenny. They're a group of fraternity brothers and Kenny is their lowly pledge. Like most things in the 80s, they take things way too far, and right when Kenny thinks he's gonna get it on with the lovely Alana, it's revealed to be a corpse. He freaks out, and rightfully so. Apparently, he had been traumatized as a kid, and this brought up repressed memories. Because, just having this happen to someone wouldn't have been enough to set them off, apparently. Finally, we jump ahead 3 years, and the same group of fraternity brothers and sorority sisters are holding a New Year's party on a train. Their whole intention is to have a good time, but no one told them that revenge was on the menu. Everyone that took part in the prank is taken down one by one, leaving just Alana. Despite the viewer assuming that Kenny is the killer, there is still a whodunit element to the story. They even bring in this magician, played by David Copperfield, as a sort of red herring. The film is constantly asking you to question the illusion of reality, whether that's through a would-be prank or actual magic. While most of the cast consists of unknown 20-somethings, veteran character actor Ben Johnson was cast as Karn, the train conductor. He has a presence in the film that adds a bit of gravitas, similar to Donald Pleasance in Halloween. He feels like a guide for both the characters as well as the actors. When he's around, you expect him to handle the situation. Eventually, it's revealed that the magician's assistant was actually Kenny dressed as a woman. It's shockingly convincing, and I know I never thought once that this was anything other than a blonde woman. This was 12 years before The Crying Game and was actually quite innovative. They could have very easily taken the cheap route of using 2 different actors for the role, but instead they went with someone who actually cross-dressed in Derek McKinnon. While the director had many issues with McKinnon due to his inexperience, you wouldn't know that from the finished product, as Derek gives a great performance. His freakout towards the end is pretty incredible. Unfortunately, the movie just kind of ends. The killer is knocked off the train, and we see the train ride off into the distance. Credits. Did they run out of money or something? Would it have been asking too much to see the train get back and see the kids all safe and sound? Would have helped bring a little more resolution to the story, since it seemingly just ends. In fact, it feels like there's a missing shot of Kenny reaching out of the frozen lake. As is, the film just kind of feels incomplete. Not to mention the fact that Alana doesn't really give her big heroine moment. She's mostly just a victim, even forced to kiss Kenny. It's actually Karn that saves the day. Again, very similar to Halloween, with Loomis coming in at the end and shooting Michael. But Laurie puts up a bit of a fight before that. Alana just cowers away and we don't even get a follow-up shot of her. The movie is simply over as soon as the killer leaves the picture. The focus is seemingly just in the wrong place.
They said he killed somebody before. And they said it might have been an accident, but he killed somebody.
It's not too hard to understand why Kenny goes about killing these people. But let's be clear, Kenny was crazy long before the prank.
And they said it might have been an accident, but he killed somebody.
But I have to give some credit to Kenny for his ingenuity. He dressed as a woman, tricked an illusionist in the process, and was able to get hired on for the party of his traumatic prankers. Talk about planning. Revenge is a massive motivating factor for this killer, and so there's a certain malice to each of his murders. But most of the violence comes from the aftermath versus the actual kill itself. The majority are unseen stabbings or quick cutaways, and we're left to discover the gory bits with whichever train rider happens to come across the scene. As far as his look goes, that changes a lot as the film goes on. Usually a killer has one distinct mask that we can talk about, but in Terror Train, the killer has multiple. Each of the fraternity brothers has a different costume for the party, and the killer takes theirs for his own when he murders them. The Groucho Marx mask is such an ingenious design that it really makes you yearn for more of it. But unfortunately, it's one of the least featured as it's taken from the first kill of the movie, Ed. See, Ed is one of the more annoying human beings you'd ever come across in life.
They just all aboard? That's ridiculous! They can't be bored! I haven't even started!
He's so annoying that people don't even know when he's being stabbed in the gut with a sword. Instead, they just think he's being his usual self and ignore him. Don't be like Ed. Next is the Lizard, which is the rubber suit that looks straight out of Humanoids from the Deep. It is the silliest look and thankfully not featured very often. The bird outfit is seen worn by Mo, and Kenny is only seen from the waist down when he's wearing it, so it practically doesn't even count. Then we've got the monk outfit. While not quite as memorable as the Groucho mask, the monk's long dark robe and bald head covered in blood is a whole different kind of iconic. Couple that with Kenny's manic behavior as he chases after Alana, and it's quite the visual. Finally, albeit briefly, Kenny dresses up as brakeman for the train. I would have just said conductor, but it says brakeman right there. The costume is kind of unnecessary, but it's honestly one of my favorite looks, almost feeling like an Alice Sweet Alice homage. Unfortunately, with all the good that they did with this character, they offed him in a pretty unspectacular way. He gets thrown off the train by the old train conductor. Oh, and he does it with a shovel. Talk about demeaning. We then see as his body floats in the frozen river. It's very underwhelming given how well they've set him up as the story progressed. This third act fall off started to be very common with the slasher films that had spawned from the Halloween craze. Filmmakers looking to make a quick buck just didn't care, and the endings are often a result of that.
You girls better come back to the consulting room with us. We may have to do an exploratory.
Unlike Prom Night, which wrapped 2 weeks prior to filming on Terror Train, Jamie Lee is in full virgin mode here. Next to Laurie Strode, her Alana Maxwell character is a stereotypical final girl. So it's mostly her doing the right thing and then looking concerned about the proceedings. But man oh man, what is it about Jamie Lee Curtis starring horror movies that have that sounds like I'm listening to a porno quality? Oof. Everyone else on the train is a total slut though. Seems like no one here has morals and they're all just wanting to get laid. Given that these characters are mostly fraternity brothers and their sorority girlfriends, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but yeesh. The film avoids going for the kind of nudity you would expect. Yikes. Almost looks like the bathroom lady out of The Shining. We also get some random boobs later, but hey, random is better than dead. Based on the reaction during the magic show, there would be a straight up riot if I didn't include David Copperfield here. He oozes the 70s and wouldn't stand out on a disco dance floor with his over the top outfit. They show several of his tricks fully, so if you're into magicians, then you've got all you could ask for and more. This guy knows his magic. He and Jamie Lee have a fun, flirty thing going on, which makes sense since they're the prettiest people in the movie. Other than Karn, of course.
He's gonna kill everybody! We've gotta tell them!
I'm not moving.
There's really nothing quite like seeing a bad person get their comeuppance. Here, we've watched as Hartbachner's Doc has treated just about everyone on the train with some level of disrespect. He's the lead frat guy that everyone else follows, and he's as big of a douche as you'd think he is. And as expected, as soon as the shit hits the fan, Doc is a whimpering baby. See, once the bodies are discovered on the train, Karn reverses course to get them back to safety. Doc decides he's going to lock himself away in a train car.
We are gonna die unless we get some help! But I don't know who to trust anymore. I don't even trust you.
Excuse me, what? He's manhandling you even as you say this. Damn it, Alana. Thankfully, she leaves because she actually wants to help her friends. While Doc doesn't really care about the other people on the train and thinks he's locked himself away from all of them, and therefore the killer. And unknown to Doc is that the killer is actually hidden away in his compartment. There's a bit of a tussle as Doc tries to get away, but he's trapped in the room because of his own doing. A hand rests on his shoulder, and he's relieved because he thinks it's his buddy Mo. But Doc is so out of it that he doesn't think to look up, and this ends up being his ultimate demise. While we don't see the kill happen, we do get to see the aftermath as Karn comes across it, and it's pretty brutal. Needless to say, Doc got what was coming to him.
I never told you. I'm so sorry.
You haven't changed.
Terror Train came to movie theaters on October 3rd, 1980. Distributed by 20th Century Fox, in what would be their only venture into the slasher genre during the 80s boom, the movie had nearly $5 million in marketing behind it, and managed to bring in $8 million. Like most slashers at the time, the film was pummeled by critics. One of the more positive reviews came from Variety, which called the film competent. I guess we'll take what we can get. Ah, that's better.
Come on, look at me. Just my luck, she's a lesbian.
While mostly unknown at the time, the cast would move on to much bigger things. Jamie Lee Curtis would wrap up her time in slashers with the following year's Halloween 2, before standing out in big hits like Trading Places and A Fish Called Wanda. Hartbachner moved on to films such as Supergirl and Die Hard, while David Copperfield would eventually fly. Yeah, this guy is really putting the others to shame with his accolades. Spottiswoode would leave the horror genre well behind him, moving on to direct films such as Tomorrow Never Dies and Turner and Hooch. While Terror Train never received a sequel, fans have always been sure to keep its memory alive. Scream Factory did a Blu-ray of the film in 2012. It has since gone out of print. Fortunately, 88 Films picked up the slack and released a Blu-ray of their own in the fall of 2019 that included a brand new HD transfer, and it's the best the movie has ever looked. So if you're wanting to pick up a copy for yourself, that's really your only option, unless you want to pay an absurd amount. Terror Train may not have had the legacy that Halloween or Prom Night has, but it still maintained itself as one of the premier films of the slasher boom, whether that's because of the memorable masks or just having a legendary scream queen as its lead. It's one slasher that every genre fan should seek out.
Kenny, you're better than he is. I'm sure you're better than he.
I am. He didn't know how to cut a woman into pieces.